It was just another late-night shift at Walmart, or so I thought. I was a stock clerk, tasked with walking the aisles, making sure everything was in place. This shift was particularly quiet, too quiet. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I pushed my cart down the empty aisles, the hum of the refrigerators in the back being the only sound that accompanied me. I was used to the silence, it was eerie, but normal. But then I heard it, footsteps. Slow and deliberate, echoing from somewhere far off, like someone was walking through the store but not in a hurry. I froze for a moment, thinking maybe a fellow employee had come in to finish up their shift. I glanced around. No one was there. The store was empty, or at least it seemed that way. Probably just the wind, I muttered to myself, but something told me it wasn't. The air felt colder. I pulled my jacket tighter around me and continued working, pretending the odd feeling crawling up my spine was just my imagination. I walked past the electronics section, near the TVs. That's when I saw it. A man standing still in the middle of the aisle, his back to me. It was strange, though. The way he stood, perfectly still, not a muscle moving. Even stranger, the TVs around him were all displaying the same static screen. He didn't seem to notice. I didn't recognize him as one of the regulars. "Hey, can I help you with something?" I called out, but my voice sounded weak, even to me. He didn't respond. He just stood there. My heart started to race. I slowly approached, trying to stay calm, my fingers tightening around the cart. The closer I got, the more I realized something was off. He was wearing clothes that looked too out of place, even for Walmart. A long, dark coat, ragged at the edges. His shoes were covered in mud, like he had just walked out of a swamp. I was about to tap him on the shoulder when the lights flickered again, this time going out completely, plunging the aisle into darkness. That's when I heard it, his voice. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me, like a hand around my throat. I backed away quickly, my heart pounding. The lights came back on, and he was gone. But I wasn't alone anymore. Something felt different. Something was watching me. I turned to look down the aisle, my eyes scanning for movement, but there was nothing. I had to get out of there. I didn't wait for a second longer. My feet moved faster than I thought possible, my pulse hammering in my ears as I dashed toward the break room. I figured I'd call my manager, get some reassurance, maybe even leave for the night if I had to. I was more than willing to throw in the towel and call it a night after what I had just experienced. As I rounded the corner near the restroom, the hairs on the back of my neck prickled again. I felt like someone, or something, was right behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, but the aisle was empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I pushed through the break room door and slammed it shut behind me, breathing heavily, leaning against it for support. But my relief was short-lived. A low, whispering sound began to crawl into my ears, like a voice just below the threshold of hearing. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like it was coming from everywhere. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A shadow. A figure standing in the corner of the break room, just out of the light's reach. My stomach twisted in fear. I wasn't imagining this. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling as I reached for the phone on the table. The shadow didn't answer. It just stood there, still, as if waiting for something. I wasn't sure if I should move, scream, or just run. But before I could do anything, the whispering grew louder. It wasn't coming from the corner anymore. It was surrounding me. I felt it crawling inside my skull, like a dozen voices all speaking at once, but I couldn't understand them. The words were garbled, distorted. I stumbled back toward the door, my breath quickening. The door, why was it still shut? I didn't remember locking it, but it felt like something was holding it in place. Panic surged. I reached for the handle, yanking it hard, but the door wouldn't budge. Then I heard it. A slow, deliberate breath. I whirled around, my heart racing as I locked eyes with the figure in the corner. It was closer now, close enough that I could see the outline of a face. But it wasn't human. Not entirely. Its eyes were too wide, too dark, and its mouth twisted in a grotesque grin. That's when I understood what the whispers were. They weren't voices. They were, laughing. I could feel the blood draining from my face as it took a step toward me, its shoes scraping against the linoleum. It spoke again. You can't leave. The air in the break room grew thick and heavy, as if the walls themselves were closing in. My heart raced as I pressed my back against the door, struggling to keep it shut against whatever force was holding it. The figure in the corner didn't move, but its eyes, those eyes, never left me. It was almost as if it was studying me, waiting. I tried to breathe, tried to think. I was trapped, and the panic was slowly suffocating me. I reached into my pocket for my phone, but it wasn't there. My mind scrambled, had I left it by the stock carts? No, I had to focus. I needed to get out. I needed to survive. With a sudden burst of energy, I shoved my shoulder against the door, gritting my teeth in frustration. The door finally creaked open a bit, just enough to let me slip through. My muscles screamed in protest, but I didn't care. I bolted down the hallway, not even sure where I was going, just away. The whispering followed me. The same, low laughter, like a broken record skipping in my head. I heard footsteps again, slow, dragging, like someone was following me, but every time I turned, there was nothing. Who's there? I shouted, but my voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the endless aisles. I kept running, my feet pounding against the linoleum floor, until I reached the far end of the store. The exit doors were in sight, just a few feet away, but something wasn't right. The bright lights of the store flickered again, plunging the aisle into a dim, cold glow. In the shadows, I could see it, the figure, standing in front of the exit, blocking my way. The same grotesque smile stretched across its face. You can't leave, it whispered, and I could feel its breath, hot and sour, on my skin. You're mine now. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might explode. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. My survival instincts kicked in. I turned and sprinted the other direction, my breath ragged, my legs burning with exhaustion. I didn't know where I was going anymore, but the only thing that mattered was escaping whatever that thing was. I crashed through the aisles, knocking over shelves, desperate to lose it, to outrun it. But no matter how fast I ran, no matter how many turns I took, the shadow followed. It was always just behind me, too close. Suddenly, I found myself back at the electronics section, the same place where I had first seen it. The TVs flickered again, the static buzzing louder than before. I turned to face the aisle, ready for whatever was coming next. But the figure was gone. For a brief moment, I thought it was over. I was safe. Then I heard the whisper, louder than ever before, right behind me. You'll never escape. I froze. The whisper had come from so close that I could feel the hot breath against my neck, but when I whipped around, there was nothing there. The aisle was empty. The cold chill that had settled into my bones only deepened. I wasn't imagining this. It was real. Whatever was haunting Walmart, whatever was hunting me, was right there. I turned back toward the entrance, desperate for any way out, but my feet wouldn't move. It was as though the floor itself had turned to quicksand, pulling me down into an abyss of dread. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. For a split second, everything went black. I didn't know how long I stood there, immobilized by fear. The world around me felt like it was closing in, the edges of my vision narrowing. I could feel the darkness wrapping around me, swallowing me whole. Then the lights came back on. I staggered forward, gasping for breath, but when I looked up, my heart skipped a beat. The aisle was full of them. Not just one figure. There were several now, standing in the shadows, their faces obscured but their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. They didn't move, just stood there, watching me, waiting. It felt like my chest was caving in, like the air had been sucked out of the room. My body refused to obey my mind. But then, the whispering returned, louder this time, more insistent, as though the voices were coming from every direction. "Leave now," the voices hissed, overlapping and disjointed, "or you'll be like us." I didn't need to ask what that meant. With my heart pounding so loudly I thought the whole store could hear it, I backed away, my eyes darting around, looking for an escape. But every way I turned, more figures appeared, more shadows emerged from the shelves. They were closing in, their faces twisted in grotesque, unnatural expressions. My legs finally gave out from under me, and I collapsed to the floor. I could feel the coldness creeping into my skin as if the air itself had turned to ice. The whispers turned to laughter, hollow and mocking. I was surrounded, trapped in a maze of shadows and fear. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw something moving. A flash of movement, faster than anything human. My eyes widened, searching the shadows. It wasn't just the figures anymore. Something else was coming. Before I could react, I felt a hand on my shoulder. The hand on my shoulder was cold, unnaturally cold, like the touch of death itself. I didn't need to turn around to know what it was. I felt it in my bones, deep in my gut, something was behind me. And it was waiting. The coldness spread through my body, as if I were being frozen from the inside out. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. My heart hammered painfully against my ribcage as if it were trying to escape. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to fight, to do anything, but I was paralyzed. The whispering grew louder, merging into a chorus of voices that made my ears ring. "It's too late," they chanted, their words seeping into my brain, digging under my skin. "You're ours." In a final burst of panic, I twisted my body, spinning to face the source of the touch. But when I did, there was nothing there, just empty space. And yet, the pressure remained on my shoulder, as though an invisible force was holding me in place. I stumbled back, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The figures in the aisles moved closer, their shapes blurring in the dim light, each step they took causing the temperature to drop even further. The world felt suffocating, like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. I ran. I didn't care where I was going, as long as it was away from those things. My feet scrambled across the floor, slipping on the polished tiles as I turned every corner, desperate to find an exit, desperate to escape the terror that had enveloped me. But the store stretched on, seemingly endless. Every aisle looked the same, dark, cold, and filled with shadows. I didn't realize until I heard the footsteps behind me, slow and deliberate, following at a distance, that the figures weren't chasing me. No, they were just waiting. They were waiting for me to come to them, like a cat playing with a mouse. I froze in place, my hands trembling as I grasped the nearest shelf, trying to steady myself. But the whispering wasn't coming from the aisles anymore. It was coming from the walls themselves, from the very structure of the store. "You're never leaving." The words slithered into my mind like poison. I looked around, my eyes frantically scanning for any escape, any hint of a way out. That's when I saw it, the door, the emergency exit at the far end of the store. It was glowing faintly, like a lifeline in a sea of darkness. I ran toward it, faster than I'd ever run before. My breath was ragged, my body aching from the effort, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let myself be consumed by whatever this thing was. But just as my hand reached for the door handle, the lights flickered again. And the whispers stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, I heard the voice that had been haunting me all night, clear as day. It was right behind me. "You can't leave, not without paying the price." The door handle turned. I could feel the handle turn beneath my fingers, but the door didn't open. It was as if the very metal itself had come alive, locking me in, holding me prisoner. My heart slammed against my chest, a dull roar filling my ears. I knew that whatever was behind me wasn't going to let me go. It was the final moment, there was no more running. I turned slowly, my body stiff with fear, and saw it. The figure was closer now, standing just inches away, its face, a grotesque mask of shadows and twisted features, loomed over me. It grinned, that same unnatural, wide smile that made my stomach churn. "You should have listened," it whispered, its voice thick with malice. The coldness radiating from its body was unbearable, seeping into my bones. I wanted to scream, to shout, but nothing came out. The laughter, that awful, mocking laughter, echoed around me, growing louder, until it was all I could hear. The walls seemed to close in, and the ground beneath my feet felt unsteady, like I was standing at the edge of a cliff. "You've crossed the line," the figure continued. "Now you must pay the price." I tried to move, to push away, but my legs wouldn't respond. My body refused to listen, paralyzed with terror. I could feel the darkness closing in, pressing against my skin, crawling through my veins. "Please," I whispered, but it sounded pathetic even to my own ears. "Please, I just want to leave." The figure didn't respond immediately. It tilted its head, as if considering me, then reached out with a skeletal hand, its fingers long and twisted. It touched my forehead, sending a shock of cold through my body. I gasped, feeling as though I were being pulled into another dimension. In that moment, I saw it, the truth. The store wasn't just a building anymore. It was alive. The shelves, the aisles, the lights, they were all part of it. They had a will of their own, feeding off the fear of the lost souls who wandered through Walmart after hours. This wasn't a random haunting. This was something deliberate, something ancient. The whispers started again, louder now, as if they were a chant. "You will stay. You will stay forever." Suddenly, I could hear the creak of the door. It was opening. My body surged forward, the desire to escape stronger than anything I had ever felt. But the moment I stepped over the threshold, the figure spoke again, its voice now a distorted, guttural growl. "One way or another, you'll come back." I stepped outside, the cold night air hitting me like a slap to the face. The Walmart parking lot was silent, empty. But something told me that it wasn't over. I had escaped, yes, but the price had been paid. And now, every step I took felt heavier, as if something, or someone, was still watching me. I never went back to that Walmart. Not even to get my paycheck. But every now and then, when I walk through a parking lot at night, I swear I hear the same low whisper in the back of my mind. And I know that one day, I'll have to return. It's been months since that night. I thought I was free, that it was all in my head, a traumatic experience that I could leave behind. But I was wrong. It started with small things, whispers in the dark, shadows moving just out of the corner of my eye. I thought maybe I was just still haunted by the fear, but then it began to get worse. The nightmares were vivid, terrifying. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, feeling the chill of the store's air on my skin, hearing the faintest echoes of those mocking whispers. And the dreams, they weren't just dreams. They were memories, flashes of that night, replaying over and over. And then, last night, I saw it. I was walking home from a late-night shift at another job, exhausted, my mind still trying to shake off the lingering unease. I turned the corner onto my street when I saw something that made my blood run cold. The Walmart was back. But it wasn't the same. It was darker, the lights flickering, casting long shadows that stretched unnaturally far. It stood on the corner, as if it had never left, just waiting for me to see it again. I stopped dead in my tracks, my feet frozen to the pavement. My heart hammered in my chest, the same terror I had felt that night surging back. The door was open, beckoning me in. I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. But somehow, my feet carried me forward. I wasn't walking, no, it was more like I was being pulled, like invisible strings were tugging me toward that cursed building. When I crossed the threshold, I felt it, an oppressive, suffocating force, just like before. The air was cold, the same cold that had seeped into my very bones that night. The lights flickered above, casting grotesque shadows that danced in time with the whispering voices. "You didn't learn," a voice echoed around me. It was the same voice, the one from before, but it was different now, more powerful, more insistent. The aisles were empty, the shelves barren, but I could still feel the presence of those things, the figures that had haunted me. The laughter was louder, but not just from the shadows this time. It was all around me, coming from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. "You are ours," the voice hissed, closer now, as if it was standing right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty aisles, the abandoned store. But I could hear it, the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer, closer. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening thud, and the room went pitch black. The air was thick, like I was drowning, unable to breathe, unable to move. And then, I heard the whispers again, this time not just from one direction, but from all around me, circling me, closing in. They were coming for me. And I knew it was time to face the price I had been avoiding. But just before they reached me, just as I felt the cold hands of the dark force closing around me, I woke up. I was back in my bed, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. I glanced around the room, everything was normal. But my hands were shaking, and I could still hear the whispers, faint and distant, in the back of my mind. I thought I was free. But now, I know better. It wasn't a dream. I knew that deep down, even as I tried to convince myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. The fear, the suffocating cold that wrapped around me, was too real. I could still feel it in my chest, a tight knot of dread that wouldn't loosen. That morning, I tried to go about my day as if everything was normal. I went to work, forced myself through conversations with co-workers, pretended that nothing had changed. But something had shifted. Every shadow seemed deeper, every corner darker. I felt like I was being watched, like something was lurking just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then came the sound. At first, it was faint, a soft scraping, like something dragging across the floor. It came from the hallway. I looked around the apartment, half expecting to see something in the doorway. But nothing. The hallway was empty. I tried to brush it off as the old pipes or the wind, but then it came again. And again. Closer. I stood up from my couch, heart pounding in my throat. The scraping sound was louder now, more distinct, like nails on wood. It was coming from the wall, just beside my bedroom door. I approached cautiously, every instinct screaming at me to turn around and run. But I couldn't. I had to know. When I opened the door to my bedroom, the room was dark, too dark for daytime. I could feel the coldness again, that bone-chilling cold that had haunted me in the store. My breath came out in visible puffs as I stepped inside. That's when I saw it, the shadow in the corner. It wasn't the figure I had seen at Walmart, not exactly, but it was close. This thing, whatever it was shifting in and out of focus, its form flickering like a faulty light bulb. It had the same eerie presence, the same chilling aura that filled the store. It was standing in the corner of my room, watching me. I couldn't move. My feet felt glued to the floor. The scraping sound continued, growing louder, as though the walls were closing in on me. The shadow slowly took form, its face twisting into that same grotesque grin, stretching impossibly wide. "You can't escape," it whispered, the voice low and slithering like venom. "You'll never be free." My legs finally reacted, moving faster than I thought possible. I turned and bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. But the whispers didn't stop. They followed me, crawling into my mind, suffocating me with their demands. "Come back to us," they said. You belong here. You always will. I stumbled through my apartment, panic rising in my throat, desperately trying to escape whatever dark force had followed me home. I grabbed my keys, my jacket, anything I could get my hands on, and I ran out the door. I didn't know where I was going, just anywhere away from this nightmare. But when I stepped outside, the sky was different. It wasn't night yet, but the sky had a sickly yellow tint, like a storm was brewing. And in the distance, I saw it. The Walmart. It was back. I wasn't sure if it was the same one or if my mind had just fractured under the pressure of it all. But there it was, standing at the edge of town, waiting for me. The lights flickered as if it were calling me back. And I knew, deep down, there was no escaping it. I stood frozen in the street, staring at the looming silhouette of the Walmart in the distance. It wasn't just a store anymore, it was a nightmare made manifest, something that had taken root in my mind and refused to let go. The air felt thick, heavier than before, like the very atmosphere around me had become suffocating. I wanted to run, to escape, but I knew I couldn't. Not anymore. I didn't want to go back. I couldn't go back. But the compulsion was there, tugging at me, urging me forward. My legs moved before I could stop them, my feet carrying me toward the store as if they were being controlled by something other than my will. The whispers were back, louder now, echoing in my ears. They weren't just voices anymore, they were sensations, crawling beneath my skin, twisting into my thoughts. You belong to us, the voices chanted. You will never leave. By the time I reached the parking lot, I felt as though I were in a trance. The world around me had faded. The Walmart loomed before me, its doors wide open, waiting for me to step inside. And I knew, deep down, that once I did, there would be no turning back. I walked through the entrance. The familiar, suffocating coldness wrapped around me instantly, seeping into my bones. The lights flickered overhead, casting long, twisted shadows along the aisles. The shelves were empty again, just like the last time. But this time, there was something different. Something more, alive. The darkness here wasn't just the absence of light, it was a presence, something that filled the air, watching me, waiting. I didn't hear the footsteps this time. Instead, I felt them. The presence that had followed me all this way, the one that had watched me, waited for me, was closing in. And I couldn't fight it. I couldn't escape. The figure from before appeared again, stepping out of the shadows. But this time, it wasn't just one. There were dozens of them, each twisted and deformed, their faces contorted into sickening smiles. They surrounded me, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly hunger. You made the mistake of coming back, one of them hissed, its voice like 1,000 nails scraping against a chalkboard. Now, you will stay. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled backward, but there was no way out. I was trapped. The cold hand touched my shoulder again, the same one I'd felt all those months ago. I gasped, but I couldn't pull away. The shadowy figure leaned in close, its breath hot and rancid against my ear. You're ours now, it whispered, its voice low and final. There is no escape. There never was. And then, the world around me went black. When I woke up, I was no longer in the Walmart. I was in the parking lot, just outside the doors, lying on the cold asphalt. The sun was rising, and everything seemed normal, too normal. For a moment, I thought I had escaped, that it had all been some strange, twisted dream. But when I stood up, I felt the weight of it. I turned around. The Walmart was gone. I didn't know how long I had been gone for, or if it was even the same reality. But I knew one thing for certain now, I was marked. The shadow, the darkness, had claimed me, and there would never be a moment of peace again. No matter where I went, no matter how far I ran, it would always be with me. And someday, I would return. Because once you've been claimed by Walmart, there's no escaping the price.